Hello, everyone. Ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs season, we thought we'd bring in the best in the business, Mike Johnson and Craig Button, to keep myself, a Leafs fan, to keep my delusions in check. You know, just answer a couple questions that we have going into the year and just see what to expect. And obviously, I'm going to have to check in with a non-Leafs fan as well. We've got Jesse for after these two, and so stick around for that. But Craig, Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Always good to keep your delusions in check. My pleasure.
I wanted to just touch on, I know Craig earlier you said that you consider the Leafs a playoff team, but Mike, what do you expect out of this team in terms of standings? Obviously they're in a much tougher division this year than they were last year with Boston, Tampa, and even Florida now in there. Where do you kind of expect them to finish in the playoffs, out of the playoffs, or even if they're in the playoffs, where in those standings?
Well, I don't think it's a real question whether they'll be in the playoffs. They will make the playoffs. While the Atlantic is very tough, I think the bottom of Detroit and Buffalo are very weak. And then Montreal's taking a real step back with some of their losses. Ottawa trying to come up. Boston's getting older. They're good. I don't know if they're better. Tampa, they lost their entire third line. They're good. I don't know if they're better. And Florida's a wild card. They might be a little bit better. I expect Toronto to compete for home ice and, in fact, finish first or second in the division. They're very, very good. We can talk about the playoff failures all we want. Bottom line is last year, they were one of the best teams in the league. They won their division. I expect them to be something close to that again. And I think it will be important for them to finish in the top two so they can have home ice as they try to work through that very large stumbling block of the first round playoffs. But I expect them to make the playoffs. I expect them to challenge home ice. I expect them to challenge for a division title.
And Mike, I think home ice is realistic for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And what I would say, too, we talk about the stumbling blocks that the Leafs encountered last year, but have encountered for the last few playoff seasons. Well, if you take all those stumbling blocks and they become significant learning opportunities, they've had enough of the learning and the teaching. I think it's a real now opportunity for them to apply those lessons and to come out on the other side of them successfully. Home ice will give you a better chance at that.
So I love the idea of home ice, and I got one last question for you here, and this is really from the fan perspective, because I think a lot of Leafs fans, because of another first round loss and things like that, they're feeling pretty down on the team this year, and I've seen a lot of people kind of say like the regular season doesn't matter, so it's going to be 82 games of whatever, and then let's see what they do in the playoffs. The one thing in my mind that I think would matter, obviously, Mike, you kind of alluded to a division, kind of potential division winners there. But what do you think the odds are that the Leafs could actually kind of compete for the President's Trophy?
I think that might be a longer shot. I think Colorado and even Vegas, because the Pacific is quite weak, might have a chance to run away with points based on who they play against in the Western Conference versus the Eastern Conference. I think the Eastern Conference might be a little bit better. So, no, I don't think President's Trophy will be a motivational chase for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Might be a little bit too far gone. But what will be a motivational chase, Craig, as I take a little tangent, is the Olympics. They got a lot of players on the Toronto Maple Leafs who want to play for the Olympics. So you talk about an 82-game grind, and how do you get through that knowing that you're going to be evaluated about the playoffs? Well, guess what? 50 games in, you have a massive carrot dangling out there for Morgan Rielly and Mitch Marner and John Tavares. Not William Nylander, Austin Matthews, they're going to go. But even Mikheyev. Like, there are a whole bunch of players on this team that are going to play in the Olympics. Peter Mrazek, Jack Campbell, you name it. And so that will be an intermediate goal that I think would be more tangible than trying to chase a President's Trophy.
It breaks up the season as well. And, you know, Corwin, people may ask the question, well, you know, all those players going to the Olympics, you know, what does that mean coming back and down the stretch and into the playoffs? Well, let's just look at their division. Florida, Tampa Bay, the Boston Bruins, they're going to have lots of players playing in the Olympics too, and the potential for a number of more players to play in the Olympics. So I don't see that as a negative for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And as Mike talked about, the motivation is great to represent your country at the Olympic Games.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. I got to go basically get my colleague here who, you guys give me an expert opinion, and then he's just going to kind of tell me why the Leafs are doing everything wrong. So I guess I got to go talk to Jesse now.
Look, man, I'm not going to tell you what the Leafs are doing wrong, but I just want to know from a hockey fan's perspective, I know you touched on it a little, but what are you planning on doing to get excited for these games? Because if you talk to any Leafs fan, they say, I don't care what happens in the regular season, yada, 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 yada. And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. What are you going to do to entertain yourself during these games? Like, does it even matter at all to the playoffs?
So, it's weird because there's a very wide range of my expectations that, like, realistically they could be in a playoff fight, like, because so their division is very good, right? And really that's what it's going to come down to for me is like being able to try and fight and be at the top of that division. And realistically, I personally feel even at the top of the league, like I know Mike Johnson just said they're not in the President's Trophy race, but that's what would make them more like kind of like exciting to me is that there's nothing better than like an overachieving team as a fan to just watch where like, okay, like, wow, yeah, if this team really comes out of the gate hot, their power play's firing, they play at the same kind of like even strength level they were last year where they were a very good team. In my mind, like that would excite me. And I personally would love to see the Leafs win a President's Trophy. They never have, but that would be really cool to me. And then one thing I would have said otherwise would have been like on an individual level, I'd really love to see Nick Robertson play a little more because I think he's awesome and he just really hasn't gotten like that full shot yet. And I thought it was going to be this year, but it seems like it might be Bunting. So I don't know, maybe Rookie of the Year Michael Bunting and Rasmus Sandin.
Oh, give me a break. Give me a break. Corwin, from my perspective, I just think there's kind of issues when you don't have a true number one goalie. Like when you're going into a season questioning whether or not Mrazek's going to be your guy or that other gentleman, Mr. Campbell, that's just kind of concerning to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like I personally, I don't think they're worse, especially if if guys like Cache and like David Kampf and guys like that can kind of work out. Like obviously it can go either way, but they've given themselves a lot of options that I think they're as good of a team as last year. And I think the big difference for me is if they figure out their special teams. Because like realistically, I know like Tampa is considered on this different level, but really what puts them on that different level is how unbelievable their special teams are. And if Toronto can even get close to that, then I do think that they can finish near the top of this division. Obviously, Boston, hey, we were just talking with Mike Johnson. He was saying Boston's a little older, right? We're seeing Florida. I don't know. Florida's that team. They looked pretty good last year, but you never know with them.
I like Florida quite a bit. And for you to say that, basically the main thing separating the Lightning and the Leafs is special teams, I think there's a little more than that, buddy.
This year, but even when you consider that the Lightning lost Yanni Gourde, right? Like they lost like their third line, right? That I think that team isn't as good as they were last year, and I think at even strength these teams are both very good. And if the Leafs can actually have like they should have a great power play. Honestly, I think that's pretty huge.
We'll have to just wait and see. Show me the money. That's all I got to say. Show me the money.
Well, thank you for pouring a little cold water on my head, Jesse, but I guess we'll just have to see what happens this season.
Absolutely, man.